Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Activity Strong webinar. My name is Megan McMahon, and I am the Director of Strategic Development here at Link Senior. For today's webinar, we are providing one free NAB, NCAP, NCCDP, NCTRC, and NZSRDT CEU credit. To be eligible for those CEU credits, you do need to remain on this webinar for the full hour today. At the end of the webinar, I will provide the required post-webinar CEU survey evaluation link in the webinar room chat box. And I will also send that CEU link to you by email this afternoon. So please be sure to check your spam folder in case it lands there. And that survey must be completed by midnight Eastern time this Thursday. If you have any questions, please email us at webinars@linksenior.com, and you will receive your CEU certificate by email before the end of the day on Friday, July 29th this week. So today's webinar is about creating winning resident engagement and community volunteer programs in senior living. And we are very excited to have Rochelle Blau and Lynn Biot-Gordon as our featured speakers. And I am proud to be the co-producer of the Activity Strong virtual event series alongside Charles D. Vilmorin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. And as many of you know, our team does believe in a world where people of all ages are respected and valued. And that is why we started our Old People Are Cool initiative back in 2017. And we also believe that activity and life enrichment professionals are incredible and that you are our industry's unsung heroes, which is why we created the Activity Strong initiative 2 years ago to acknowledge, educate, and empower each of you. We are really excited to be working with so many forward-thinking communities across the United States and in Canada, and look forward to welcoming more communities on board with us in the weeks and months ahead. And really what we're doing here is enhancing life in senior living communities by building simple and evidence-based solutions to bring person-centered care experiences to older adults and to their care partners. So our technology is focusing on engagement, connection, and really a celebration of individuality. In 2018, we did partner with the Responsive Group in Toronto and Western Oregon University to research our impact on resident engagement with funding from the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. The results showed that our technology is really increasing cognitive functioning and social engagement for residents, and at the same time, decreasing aggression and antipsychotic medication use. So here's a look at today's agenda. You can put your questions for today in the webinar room chat box and also in the Q&A section. Be sure to click the Everyone button when you're writing in the chat box so that we can all see your questions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Rochelle Blau, Vice President of Corporate Training at NCCDP and owner of Rochelle Blau Ltd. And we're also happy to share that Rochelle is one of our faculty members for the Resident Engagement Institute. And that is an exclusive resource for our Link Senior clients. And I'll be dropping a link to that in the chat box shortly. And I'm also very happy to introduce Lynn Biot-Gordon, Founder and Chief Operations Officer at ICCDP and NCCDP. Welcome, Lynn and Rochelle. I am going to let you take it from here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Lynn, we'll get you set up here at the beginning.
All right. Thank you, Rochelle. Okay, well, I would like to first and foremost thank Megan for inviting me and also Rochelle for inviting me to participate today. And on behalf of NCCDP and ICCDP, we are very grateful and excited to be a part of today's event. So thank you. And then starting off, let's talk about our learning objectives for today. First of all, we're going to, throughout today, today's session, define what Ikigai means and how it relates to the importance of resident volunteers. And we're going to learn about at least 5, actually you're going to get more than that probably, at least 5 examples of successful community and resident volunteer programs and how they might fit into your needs at your community. And we're also going to understand evidence-based studies that validate the importance of volunteer programs. Far too often, I think sometimes our volunteers don't get the highlight that they should have. So I'm so glad that today's session is focused on them. This is in your PDF that's being dropped to you today. A little bit about my own background and the NCCDP. But first, I really would like to just focus on NCCDP and ICCDP. NCCDP was founded in 2003 by myself and my colleague, Sandra Stimson. I think she might be online with us today. If she is, hi out there, Sandra. And we developed this to provide dementia education and dementia certification to the entire spectrum of professionals working in the healthcare industry who touch directly and indirectly the lives of those living with dementia. And so we have our national organization as well as our sister organization, our international presence as well. A little background about mine, which is here in your bio, here in your slides. I'm a clinical social worker by trade, been in the field for 36 years. I can't even believe it when I say that number, but my area of expertise has been in administration, direct clinical practice, health education, and of course, developing and presenting curriculum for dementia care. So with that being said, we can move on to Rochelle.
Well, I am thrilled. This has been a pleasure to be able to be involved with some of the Activity Strong initiatives and growing up professionally, learning from the best with Lynn and Sandra with NCCDP has been a real honor. One of the things I'd want to highlight is that I started as a volunteer. So for many of you, as we're trying to impart, I always say these webinars, I'm sure you're doing 8 things, shoving some lunch in, answering some emails, and we hope that you leave with, I say it's like a little Christmas list, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that might really resonate with you, that might be new, things you haven't heard of. And right out of college in 1995, I wasn't quite sure. Well, first I thought I wanted to do the Peace Corps, Lynn, and then I realized I was not cool enough to travel that far away from home. I was kind of scared. So I did AmeriCorps. And so I just want to lay that little nugget of wisdom to those of you joining our call today, that in your local area, you may have an AmeriCorps program. AmeriCorps could be individuals who might be potentially eligible to help you beautify, work on your environment, potentially could be great partners to engage with your seniors. I myself had that opportunity in Columbus, Ohio. I did a program called City Year, and I would honestly say it might have been more rewarding than getting out of college with a degree. It was a pretty special experience to do 1 year of service to a city and grow as a person and help others. So check out AmeriCorps in your own area if you've not heard of that before. All right, Lynn, I know you've seen this like 400 times as we do webinars together, but I would like to kick us off to check our own neurons. Now, we of course are not diagnosing, and we certainly know this is more for fun, but some of you probably by profession are familiar with the animal fluency test. So if you are, you might have a one-up on some of the other participants today. But as I say, go, I gave you a little start there with the giraffe. I'm a Chicago girl, and we get people very serious. They think about their local zoos. You will have 1 minute, and the only instruction you're going to be provided is to list as many animals as you can come up with, just from your memory, not from your Google. Okay, so it feels weird on a webinar to be quiet for 1 minute, but let's see how these brains are coming up. You can abbreviate, just jot on some scratch paper by you. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer for 1 minute. Here we go. On your mark, get set. Go ahead and list as many animals as you can in 1 minute. Okay, that was 1 minute. Can you imagine if anyone logged in while we were doing that? What kind of webinar is this? Okay, so in 1 minute, if you're willing to let us know, you don't have to, but in the chat, if you want to, let us know how many animals were you able to come up with? Oh, we have some of you who shared 19, 25, 18, 32. Patricia, that's like
Whoa.
society. Somebody had 35. Wow. These are amazing numbers. Whoever had 35, that could be the highest I've ever heard ever. Congratulations. Those are very, very high. Now, a couple of things I would just reference about this. This is something that crossed my desk in 2009. Talk about going back. And it appeared to me that one of the pharmaceutical companies was trying to impart something as kind of a soft resource. They were a tablet that they were given out to local hospitals and doctors' offices, nursing homes, social workers. And they just said in their nice soft language, this might be something if someone was over the age of 85 and you have to service and support them in some way, you could utilize this as a gauge to determine if the person could not stay on task with the request, if they were unable to access 8 to 10 animals and English was their first language, it could be worthwhile to continue to seek, further evaluation just to see if something might be going on. Now, you could be tired, frazzled, you might need more coffee, you could have 9 residents at your door. So we are certainly not suggesting that you have dementia if your score was lower. However, this is just something fun to get us talking. So you might say, well, what does this have to do with volunteering? I think it has a lot to do with volunteering. And we're really excited to tell you about some of the different studies, some of the supporting evidence. And I'm sure I love a couple of the things I'm going to show you today where I've asked the seniors, where I am doing some part-time work right now, to do volunteering. You better believe the letter had some supporting research. So Johns Hopkins in 2009 was able to reveal that those who volunteer actually had increased brain functioning. So this is pretty profound, right? This isn't loosey-goosey stuff. There is evidence-based support in the benefits of doing for others. So we're really excited to thread that throughout our hour with you. So with that, Lynn, great scores, everybody. Good job. Many of you probably have seen this a part of some cognitive screening tests. I think it might be in the MOCA or the slums. But with that, Lynn, I'm going to turn it back over to you and I'll be your guide. And just kind of give me a nod or next when you're ready.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about the history of volunteerism in senior care. The foundation of anything is talking about the history of it, right? And I don't know if any of you knew how Harriet Tubman was actually linked to long-term care. Our government just celebrated Juneteenth for the second time last June. And so as I was developing my slides, I thought, let me integrate something here and teach us all a little or share a little tidbit with you guys. Well, with the history of volunteerism in senior care, it starts with the first nursing homes throughout the world, actually, which started in the 1800s, because 1700s, everybody pretty much stayed home and took care of their loved ones. And then as our lives progressed, as we found ourselves getting more into the workforce and developing our own businesses, et cetera, that it was time that we needed to have our loved ones stay in different places rather than at home, because we weren't at home as long anymore. But also specialty homes were arising, like boarding houses that would specialize in specific care. Sometimes there were homes specifically for children with certain diseases or illnesses. And of course, then adults with certain types of ailments as well. And so in the 1800s, that's really how nursing homes actually began. But what we also know is they were not cheap and they weren't free. And so with small budgets, a lot of the workforce was made up of volunteers. And so a lot of long-term care started with volunteers. And now what we do know is we have a large volunteer base in our facilities. They sometimes, in some facilities, really run almost aspect of everything, just about, except for delivering medications or passing meds. So with the history of volunteerism, this is an interesting tidbit. Harriet Tubman, can we go back to that real quick? Thanks. Harriet Tubman. Most people know her as the woman who is the developer, the founder, and the leader and the journey maker for the Underground Railroad, with secret journeys that helped free many slaves during the times of slavery here in the United States. But what a lot of people don't realize is one of the things that she did was she settled in Auburn, New York in the late 1800s. And there was the need for elder care, especially elder care for those who were sort of shut out or on the outside of society. There were no places for them. So she started in 1908 the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged and Indigent Negroes. And that home stayed open. It was committed to stay open until the 1920s when the last resident died. And Harriet Tubman herself was a resident and died there in 1913. So I just wanted to share that with you, because the other thing that was important to know about this was, again, on a shoestring budget, most of the staffing was volunteers. So when we talk about volunteerism in elder care, it started right here in the United States with the onset of facilities, even Harriet Tubman's own facility, and she herself was a volunteer there as well, until she became a resident there. So that's just a little tidbit of history about volunteerism in the United States. We'll go to the next slide. So what we do know, which is really important, is that volunteers do meet the challenges that we have in long-term care. And you know what our #1 crisis is in long-term care. We've said it for years, it hasn't changed at all, that we have a big shortage of staff. That really hasn't changed. But what we do know is there are 3 factors that extremely adversely impact the quality of care of our residents. One is just the growth of the growth of our population. That once a person hits 65, we go right into what's almost like a booming population of elders. And then we have severe staff shortages. And then we also have, tied to that, the rising costs of long-term care. And so with these 3 factors presenting major challenges for us in long-term care, it's important that we pull on all of our resources. And guess what? One of our strongest resources are in long-term care. It is the volunteer base. Having a strong, robust volunteer base, well-trained, reliable volunteer base. That's so important. Next slide. So what are the benefits of volunteering? And I have to say, I call volunteering the two-way street, because as much as we give as volunteers, we also as volunteers receive back equally. And so when I say these things, I want you to think of it being a two-way street. When it comes to the benefits of volunteering, #1, it says as a volunteer, we help expand our social connections, but don't we do the same for those residents that we are engaging with? We're expanding their social connections as well by them getting to know us, right? It helps reduce stress and anxiety. It gives us as volunteers an outlet, a place where we can share stories, get away from any stress that we might have at home or the work, etc. But at the same time, our visitation with residents helps them reduce their stress and anxiety. So you see what I mean when I talk about the two-way street. It helps us as volunteers increase our self-confidence, because we know we play an important role at a facility or a couple of facilities or organizations, and that we know people look for us and that they count on us to be there in a timely manner, and they count on us to be there to run the men's poker group or whatever it might be. But at the same time, we're feeling good about it, but we also, when we're there, we make others feel good about themselves as well. Right? Again, the two-way street. And with volunteering, oops, can we go back there? Thank you. With volunteering, it provides us with a sense of purpose when we volunteer. And also, it helps us stay physically healthy when we're out there engaging, maybe helping run the exercise programs, but also, again, the two-way street. We're helping others stay physically healthy as well when we're involved with our residents at our facilities that we volunteer at. Next slide. Thanks. Well, how does Abraham Maslow fit into this? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all have, this is foundation that we've all had to study at some point in our careers. And with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he talks about reaching self-actualization. Through the years, I've come to call it psychosocial harmony. When we have psychosocial harmony, we are a fully self-actualized person. So I use that term paralleled with Maslow's self-actualization term. But when we volunteer, Maslow refers to volunteering as a way of serving or fulfilling the needs that we have in the pyramid. And I always think of this, the pyramid as literally a pyramid built of multiple bricks on each foundation. And that when we volunteer, we help plug in spots for certain bricks. So when we look at the bottom rung there on safety, when we're volunteering, we're providing the bricks of safety for our residents. We bring safety, stability, and security because they know we're going to be there. We know that they know that we're there to help them. They know that we're there on time to maybe transport to mealtime or activities and so on. We also bring that sense of belonging and love. We make connections with these folks, and we're happy to see them and engage with them every week or every day when we're there. And equally, and we equally, again, the two-way street with that. It's a sense of belonging for us that we know this facility relies on me, as I had mentioned in the previous slide, as well as esteem. Again, respect for ourselves, respect for others. We bring all that to the table in our role as a volunteer. Again, we are filling in certain bricks that help us in our foundation to build toward our self-actualization, or again, what I call our psychosocial harmony. Next slide. And with volunteering, and this also aligns with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we talk about positive emotion as a two-way street and evidence-based research that has told us that there are 5 primary motivations for volunteering. Number 1 is values, that when we volunteer, we look to satisfy personal values or humanitarian concerns. And for some people, it also fulfills religious components or a spiritual component as well. The second one is community concern, that when we volunteer, maybe we're helping a particular community that's of interest to us, or a neighborhood or an ethnic group that we feel some alignment with or we feel attached to. With esteem enhancement, again, volunteering to feel better about ourselves, but also helping others feel better about themselves. Understanding, when we volunteer, we gain a better understanding of the people that we're interacting with and that we're engaging with and helping and serving. So we might learn about other cultures, other places around the world. You never know who you might meet in elder care. You just never know who you might meet. I one day in a facility volunteering met a man who was a piano player for Phyllis Diller. He actually lived with her in Europe, and she hosted lots of parties, and he was her piano player. Who knew that I was going to meet one of Phyllis Diller's piano players, right? Just by volunteering. So you never know, and you hear about different cultures around the world, and it only enhances our knowledge and what I call our sense of wealth. And then also positive development, personal development, that when we're volunteering, we challenge ourselves, we meet new people, we make new friends, and sometimes we even further our career, or at least further our knowledge that we bring to our careers or to our relationships with others. Next slide. And remember this, here I am, I'm always a clinician at heart. Got my MSW X amount of years ago. One of the things I'm always concerned about in any topic that we talk about is the clinical aspect. Remember this, volunteers bring joy and enthusiasm and energy, but guess what? Volunteers need our support too, because just like we in the trenches, they also are at risk for compassion fatigue. They are at risk for burnout. So this is very important. So some research from Coleman, Sanderson, and Walsh, new research from this year, they say, there is an emotional downside to volunteering. So just as much as we promote this and we want it and we encourage it, we cannot forget to take care of our volunteers. That's so important. So out of this research came 4 themes that our volunteers have told us, listen, I love doing what I do, but it can be challenging, right? And then they say, hey, it's where I'm meant to be. I love this work. It's not easy, but this is where I belong. I found my niche, right? Haven't you met volunteers who say that? This is what I am meant to do. And also managing death or severe illness of their residents. That's a huge challenge for them, just like it is for families, friends, and even for us on the front lines, right? But also what they mention is when it comes to volunteers and support, there is a huge importance in being connected and connecting to one another, connecting to other volunteers, connecting to the staff and the residents and their families. Connection is a huge part of thriving and being successful as a volunteer. And of course, we want all of our volunteers to be successful, right? Next slide. So I just spoke about some of the challenges briefly. I'm not going to go over this same slide. It just kind of recaps, but look at my bold, my word in bold there. Connection with patients, connections with staff and other volunteers is extremely important. And it's important for everyone involved to have that need for everyone to feel valued. We all need to feel valued. And with volunteers, sometimes we sort of forget that. We're so glad to see them. Harold's here today. Hi, so glad to see you. You ran the group, the men's group. Oh, and so-and-so is here to do the transport. But we forget sometimes that they need encouragement and support, and that connection with them is so important. So remember, we have to uplift our volunteers. As much as we're so used to having them there to help keep the enthusiasm and energy going in our facilities, we have to remember that sometimes they're running on E too. So connection is important. So how do we validate our volunteers? Remembering compassion fatigue is real for them. Burnout is a high possibility for them, just like it is for us in the front lines, right? So not just checking in, it's important to provide support and outlets for them. And a big part of support for your volunteers is education, right? So it's important to provide educational opportunities for them to help them manage their feelings and help them manage their experiences that they're having in our communities, because they're witnessing staff have blowouts with each other. They're witnessing a daughter crying and weeping at the bedside because mom has just a few hours left, right? They're witnessing all the same things we are. So it's important to provide lots of education, for them about all kinds of topics. Of course, here I am representing the NCCDP and ICCDP. So of course, I'm going to talk about dementia education being very important for our volunteers. They may have experienced dementia in their personal lives, but now they're experiencing here on the front line as a volunteer in our communities. So dementia education is very important. Include them in the in-services that you're offering, as well as the other topics, all the other topics that you might have. You should always encourage your volunteers and cut out time for them to be a part of those in-services and seminars that you're hosting. Even sometimes offer to pay for them to go out to programs because their education is just as important as any other frontline person in your building, because it only helps to enhance who they are as a volunteer, makes them better prepared as a volunteer. And again, it's the foundation of how we support them. And a lot of times people bypass volunteers. You're not even thinking, I would love to, just you chime in on the chat. How many of you include your volunteers in educational programs in your buildings? Anybody, just put in chat, say I do, or I don't. I want to see it. Anybody can read the chat for me and tell me? I do. Okay, yeah, all right. No, we do not. Okay, so now you got to start, right? Okay, we don't. Now you got to start. I do. Yes, as much as possible. Ooh, I love that. All right. Some sets don't, sometimes. Yes, we don't. Okay, so that means we've got a good mix here. So that means you're hearing today that if you don't have a lot going on for your volunteers in terms of education, start it, invite them, make time, make space for them. I saw someone said we used to. Okay, get back to it. All right. Oh, you got it in your policies. That's awesome. Yes, that your volunteers are part of your education program. Great. That's great to write that into your policies, people. Take notes on this stuff. Oh, and she says, oh, she has one volunteer, so it's hard. I get that. Yeah. And sometimes that's where we're limited, when we don't have a huge volunteer base. Yeah. Someone says volunteers at the Alzheimer's Association are good people to draw in, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff coming in the chat, isn't it?
I know, it's flying. I love it. You guys are awesome.
So you keep triaging that chat and we'll keep learning.
Okay, yes. So now we're going to turn it over to Rochelle for a moment. Right?
Yeah, it's so fun that Lynn and I have worked together. Gosh, it's been at least 8 years or so. And every time I love when we get to slow down, we always pick up new things from each other. So I swear I'm not over here texting, I'm writing notes, things to pick up and glean from our time together. So I always appreciate that. A couple of things I just came to my mind while you were speaking that I wanted to bring to us before I get into this important study. And let's blow up the chat again. Who knows what day of the week are people most likely to volunteer? Anybody have a guess? According to the Bureau of Statistics for labor. Good guesses, good guesses, good guesses. Sundays. Isn't that okay? Now we're seeing some Sundays. So now this might lend to what I'm about to say. Catching some people who may, some of your church groups or people who come in with their family, want to give back to the local community. That was a little bit of a dated study, 2015. So maybe someone can find a more updated study. Does anyone know the average age group who's most likely to volunteer? Would anyone say teenagers, midlife, late life? What age group? Interesting. Okay, someone said 59 and up. 65 and older. 65 and older, right? So I think that lends so nicely, Lynn, to what we were talking about with Maslow and that weird word I'm going to talk about in a minute, that everybody needs to feel needed. And so while we think, the American dream in the old days is we were going to work really hard and blue snowbirds in Ohio. Oh, I'm a Midwest girl, we're going to work real hard and then go to Florida, but people still need to feel needed. So who has heard of the Nun Study? Let us know in the chat if you have heard of the Nun Study. And if you have not heard of the Nun Study, I know who has time to sit around and read, right? A few of you have said, yes, you've heard of it. I would put this on your reading list. I think if these kinds of topics about what we know, what we can control, what we have learned, I'm going to be putting it in my own words. So any clinicians and researchers on the call, forgive me. It is a book you can find on Amazon. It's called Aging with Grace, and it is still in process. Now, if you think about a couple of things, they could control that they're not going to have the stress of husbands and kids. They hope on the average they've controlled some variables about lifestyles, the intake of alcohol and other substances on average. So they were able to really tap into their education, their diet, the amount of socialization, and even to the detail of if they were involved in their retirement community with volunteerism. So I'm going to put my own words, but for many of us in the recreation, quality of life world, which is, I bet, a bunch of you in the participant login today, we know, we've heard the term use it or lose it, right? Well, the groundbreaking study, in my own words, there was an individual who was presenting, which would probably been eligible for palliative or hospice. Nonverbal, non-ambulatory, special diet, probably was on our sensory program. There was another individual who probably had some pretty severe arthritis. She propelled in a wheelchair. She was in mass every single day, went to trivia. She was helping peel potatoes in the kitchen. She was everybody's friend. She helped knit some hats for the newborns. And they all donate their brains to research at autopsy. Well, unfortunately, the very active nun passed away unexpectedly, even before the nun who looked as if she was more frail. And when they put their brains under the microscope, there was a very startling finding that the nun who was crocheting, going to mass, helping others, very social, moving and grooving and out talking to her buddies, her brain showed more atrophy and clinical evidence of progressed Alzheimer's than the resident who could not walk or talk. That was a pretty shocking finding at the time. And so this is really where we started to hear about brain reserve, lifestyle, kind of, we may still have clinical evidence of that brain atrophy at autopsy, but yet her symptom presentation wasn't really there. So that's exciting, right? And how many of you, oh boy, Lynn, I know you've seen these over the years. And sadly with COVID, I've even saw it with my own mom and many people when they weren't getting out as much as they used to. And they knew to work the front room. Hi, Lynn, it's so nice to see you. Looking great today. Love the purse. How are the kids? Oh, pushing lunch sometime soon, they could keep their social graces about them in the main area, but then you go to their room and they've stolen all the fruit from the bistro and there's fruit flies because they've hoarded all the bananas and they're rinsing out their briefs because they want to save money and they're hanging everywhere and the room screams, something's going on here. So tell us in the chat, do many of you have some of your seniors who probably have some of those social graces that allow them, to kind of mask perhaps how serious the actual cognitive decline might be. So I think this is a study that is chock full of hope. I think it is a book club that could be of very exciting content for family members. I think it also is one I refer to in one of the practices I'm going to tell you here in a minute. When I tried to get our active residents to volunteer, I referenced this study in the letter. So I said, hey, we know that doing for others can be helpful. So the author is, and the researcher, or at least one of the researchers, is David Snowden. And we know that doing for others and positive emotions elicited from that can create a protective reserve that can help keep symptom presentation at bay longer, which is pretty exciting stuff. There is a little YouTube clip on the nun study, but unfortunately today I won't get a chance to show you, but it always makes me smile. So if you're a YouTuber, check out the nun study and you can see a little vignette of some of the nuns being interviewed. All right, Lynn, back to you.
Mm-hmm. And so as we're talking about, cognitive impairment and staying active, can I volunteer in the midst of having cognitive impairment? Why, of course we can, right? And so these are just some things that folks can still do and be purposeful and provide meaningful time with residents or with peers. Believe it or not, transporting residents to activities in the building, right? Helping with transporting to the meal times, to the activities, et cetera, right? Making social visits room to room, meal assistance or offering snacks, assisting with letter writing, because some folks like to still, do a lot of the letter writing to people. Not everybody is on the internet, right? So it is helpful to actually put pen to paper and put a stamp on a letter and send it out to our grandchildren and other loved ones. Volunteers can can assist with sensory programs, can assist with other rec events as well, can assist with the laundry, helping residents fold and put their laundry away, gardening care. Hey, as I said, I once met Phyllis Diller's piano player, right? Music, they can bring their guitar to the facility and play. They can bring their flute or their saxophone to the facility and play. If there's a piano on site and they play the piano, they could, play piano for the residents and laugh, have a good time, chuckle, have a great time, have a silly time with residents. We can also help out with one of the things I just saw happening at the church down the street from my house is a group of elders who were helping to assemble the programs for Sunday service. So everybody's folding and overlapping those booklets and putting those pamphlets together for Sunday service. And what came to mind was there are volunteers there who definitely are in early stages of dementia, and they're there 3 days a week volunteering. And that's one of the things that they help out with at their church.
I love it. I wanted to also show this. This is a piece of framed art that I keep in my office. And she did not come to one activity, but every single month she wanted a ream of fresh paper and those smelly markers, Mr. Sketch. And she wanted the list of any new move-in or birthday or anniversary, and she made it her job. So talk about if we only tracked by attendance, we would have never captured what a quality of life she had, and she gave herself a purpose. Oh, that lends perfectly to this weird word Linda and I were talking offline. What is this ikigai stuff? I sure hope many of you have heard grumblings of the blue zones. If for some reason, and by the way, I would like to clarify, we have no affiliation, no endorsement, no relationship with any of these, the nun study, the blue zones. They're just important information that have evidence-based research that we need in the function we hold in serving our seniors. So the blue zones, I think, is also very exciting. It is a book and a website, and it is a National Geographic researcher. So if you've heard of or doing anything with the blue zones, let us know in the chat. And they studied pockets of the world. And this is pretty mind-blowing. they have 12 times less dementia, obesity, and heart disease as we have in the United States. So that's pretty staggering. And as you can imagine, they can look at little pockets and they can see that they live still with family and they still get up and have a reason to be needed. That is what Ikigai is out of Japan. It is a philosophy of living, and that means for that which I get out of bed every day. What is it that gets me out of bed that for a reason? And can you imagine in the United States, by the age of 67, sorry guys, I know a lot of us seemed a little far away when I was 22. Now that I'm getting close to 50 and a husband in his later 50s, by the age of 67, the average American has 2 health problems. So we're waiting to retire, and we want to be sure that we are balancing leisure, recreation, and meaning and purpose throughout all of our days, throughout all of time. So what does that look like for you? I think we're getting a lot of purpose, bringing joy to people, but how can we tap into that for every senior we take care of? And so I think that's a very different metric than thinking of attendance, right? Even that person with the most progressed dementia, that was a devout Southern Baptist who will hold my hand and rub it so kindly and will hum along to Amazing Grace. That's an Ikigai for a 60-year member of the choir. So I challenge you. Also, if anyone's kind of scared to find out the results, but a couple times a year I tap in, there's a little test you can take on the Blue Zones called a True Vitality test. And you can kind of tell it some of your lifestyle choices and it will kick back a little report. And so you can imagine, again, for some of your well seniors, this could be something to focus on, lifestyle changes that might be worth making. So this lends to where I made the letter out to some of our well seniors who, Lynn, I'm not like those people. Those people, I'm not like them. See, they need help, right? You kind of have that breakdown where there is that group perceives that they're not like those people. And so, and sometimes we want to bridge that group always. And I have these resources that we would, again, be happy to share. Or Megan, I'm not sure if they are going to be in the chat, but you could certainly change them to meet the needs where you work. But I called it a Gifts to Give program. Or currently, I told Lynn recently, I came out of retirement. I went to go to a care plan meeting last November. My mom resides here in the Chicagoland area, any Chicago friends, at the Concord Place. It's a beautiful, very kind, compassionate building taking care of lower income people, 350 seniors, and their activity person quit. When you have 350 seniors, that's never going to go well. And he's like, can I ask you to come out of retirement? I was like, oh, that's funny. He's like, no, I'm serious. So I am there 2 days a week. And I love working for an entrepreneurial, is that a word? Entrepreneurial visionary. He gets it, right? When your leadership gets it, right, Lynn? When you have that administrator or executive director who says, we are not going to entertain people, we are going to tap into their gifts. And so he already had a little bit of a culture of that called the purpose-driven programs. And he had 8 seniors leading activities. We sent this letter out to every single senior who lived there. We held a meeting. We said, what does that look like for you? What do you have to offer? Now, as a recreation therapist lady, I was pretty sad to say my own mom is not a party girl. She wasn't having any of it. I could give her a list of people to pray for in the room. She wasn't coming out to the parties. She wasn't going to come out and collate and do things, but that's okay. I had to respect that. So I did also put the little study about some of the evidence-based research about why it's worth doing for others in addition. Then there was a little inventory that allowed people to tell us, do you plan to come to the information meeting? If not, here are some of the types of things we've thought of that could be a fit, but maybe you have something we haven't even thought of that might be a right fit. So please let us know below if we've missed something that you might want to do. So again, these are templates that I'd be happy to provide. We'll make sure at the end you have Lynn and I's email addresses. If we can get more hands doing Ikigai, more people are going to have happier and more fulfilling lives. So let me showcase a couple of people that came out of our program, Gifts to Give. This is Dorothy. She is quite esteemed. She is from a very small town in Canada. And we started a few different fundraisers called Spare Change for a Change. So we look at, now she of course looks quite independent, but I will confirm, as many of you on the webinar today, and Lynn, I know we're hearing this across our teaching around North America and other countries, 350 people supposedly in independent living. Maybe 290 are having some beginnings of changes, right? So while people, and Dorothy is lovely and fabulous and independent, but I know we are all serving a population where people are waiting so much longer that even in supposed independent living, we have a lot of frail individuals who might need adaptation to these programs. So spare change for a change. We saw the sad change and the crisis for the Ukraine population in the Chicagoland area. Residents signed up for shifts. We collected spare change, over $1,500. They rolled the change. And what was probably the most exciting thing about this is Dorothy was adamant. We had to go find that big check that you can write in to your amount of your donation. And I do want everyone to know you can find that on Amazon and you can dry erase it so you can reuse it. So we did go out to the church to drop off our collection, but this took on a life of its own for the community, for the families, for the employees, for the children. At the Easter egg hunt with the local community, people could buy a Ukraine flag. So Dorothy here got to go to the Ukraine church to drop off the donation, and it really was very meaningful for a month. CNA week, I bet you all did super cool stuff. Let us know in the chat, how do you use your large theme weeks, National Skilled Nursing Week, National Assisted Living Week, National Nurses Week, all of those weeks we want to love everyone. So we did not your average CNA. And so again, the residents got together, about 15 of us collated dollar store bags, you know, with all the fixins to make a nacho at home. In addition, we did contact some of our different hospice and home health and different groups who we partner with. They all put their swag in the bags. You know, they had all kinds of fun water bottles and pedometers. And so that was fun to really fill those bags up. And then dietary, they got to walk through and make, you know, nachos that day, but really fun to see the residents getting involved. I love, let us know in the chat some of your things you use. Sometimes it's hard to stay creative. I like to use teachers pay teachers. So sometimes the brain goes to the teacher place, Lynn. So they have a lot of the very cutesy pootsy little labels you can use, you can download, they print very nicely. That's where we got our nacho average, I think, and then it let me type into it. Easter eggs, which I'm sure a lot of you have done those. COVID's been a little tricky for us, but this with 2,000 eggs we had to fill. And any of you who've learned from mistakes, this is kind of funny, not funny. We got 500 little erasers that the kids collect, Lynn, and we mixed it in with the candy. Well, one day, the very astute group of ladies said, I see a choking hazard in the making. And I said, oh my gosh, you have saved my job and a possible lawsuit and a choking hazard. We had to go back through every single egg. So you can imagine I owed the residents lots of donuts and coffee for that little mix up. So we went back, we pulled out all of the great thinking by my amazing residents though. And so we pulled all those erasers out and we did games and contests for the 8 to 12-year-old group and pulled the candy eggs separately, but always fun to create camaraderie with the community. And from Gifts to Give, we now have a theater production. Cheryl used to run a dance school, and this is something that gives her joy and meaning and purpose. And we are partnering with some local high schools, and it gives them something to work on. Let us know in the chat if any of you have ever done a production, a choir, a show. There really is some great opportunity. We have no talent, but we sure have fun. And we are working on a Cheer Me Up choir. And we're getting bright yellow shirts with big obnoxious smiles on them. And we're trying to get at least a 15-song repertoire where we can go out. Because we're more independent assisted living, we want to prepare our show to go to some of the skilled buildings to sing this fall. People are very into their choir practice as well. So with that, I think, Lynn, this turns back over to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to save us some time. This is an actual video from YouTube that you can look up, but I want you guys to look up Glamour Gals. It's an actual program nationwide. They have chapters in most states in the United States. And this is a volunteer idea for your community for parallel programming, where it's intergenerational. because you've got some young girls who are all interested in glamming up. They're into giving hand massages and manicures and pedicures. And so they come to your facility, and it's a spa and cookie making day. And they have a ball. The girls benefit from it as volunteers, and your residents benefit from it too. But here's the thing about parallel programming. You understand you're going to have programming running for all levels of cognitive ability. And so there's a place for every single person when you run an event like this. You can have, I'll just say, for the spa end, you can have residents who can still help people soak their hands in the water. Remember Madge with Palmolive? Remember that? And then give massages with lotion. You have folks who can give that and receive that, right? Then you have the young girls who are doing a little more high level with the painting of the nail polish, as well as residents who are able to manage that as well, can give manicures to their peers as well. Then on the cookie end, we mix that up as well. You have folks who can be the mixers of the batter, the tasters of the batter. You have those who are just there to enjoy the aromatherapy of the batter as it's cooking in the machine, in the bread machines or cookie or microwaves, however, whatever you choose to use. But it's a full afternoon where we're inviting a young group of kids to come in, and we're doing parallel programming, and it's really a spa and cooking day. You might need to break it up and have one session that's just spa, hands and nails day, and then cookie day, a separate event, depending on how busy your facility is, depending on how many residents you have available to participate. But it's a full day, a full afternoon of a wonderful idea. So I ask you all to please take a look, go on YouTube and look up Glamour Gals. You can look up this link actually, because you're getting the download of this, the PDF of this presentation today. So please check out Glamour Gals, great volunteering ideas, as well as parallel programming involving everyone at every level of functioning to be able to give and receive. It's a great day. Next slide. And also, you know, at NCCDP and ICCDP, well, specifically on ICCDP, we have a Montessori dementia program. You can take the course online and get certified in Montessori dementia care. And here are some Montessori ideas that you might want to do with volunteers like moms and tots groups, and as well as other groups. Movie matinee day. So, you know, the whole concept of Montessori is for us to step back and just create the environment and the cueing and allow the residents to facilitate their own programs. And with Movie Matinee Day, everyone gets to participate. There are many direct roles, and then there's many hands-off prompting roles in the background, which would be the Montessori concept and the Montessori approach. An idea for Movie Matinee Day is having, maybe you have a popcorn machine. So you have one person who's popping your popcorn. You have residents who have made tickets in advance. So one ticket might, and you might do with photos, one ticket might have a sticker of like a cup of lemonade. Another sticker has a cup of water on it. Another sticker has cookies, and another sticker has the popcorn. And so we might have a resident going to each person in the audience saying, would you like lemonade or water? And so there's somebody who's carrying the lemonade tickets, giving to those residents who want lemonade. There's someone who carries the water tickets, giving out to those who want water. There's someone who's carrying the popcorn tickets to give out tickets to whoever wants popcorn, etc. Then you have someone or several residents who are now going to deliver. So if someone holds up their popcorn ticket, you have a resident who's going to bring the cup of popcorn to those residents. You have a resident who's going to bring a pitcher of water to pour water for the residents holding up their water ticket, etc. So you guys, you get the flow of what I'm talking about. And it's totally a way for everyone to participate. And it's using the Montessori approach. And it's also integrating your volunteers into it. So they can have hands-on roles as well as in the background Montessori approach, where they're just there for prompting and cueing. And guess what? Everybody has a skill to offer, even Cookie Monster, darn it. So this guy is Mark Berry. He's an actor. He's also been Cookie Monster. He volunteers at a facility in Woodland Hills, California that I have a relationship with. And they're a wonderful place. It's mostly retired actors or people who have been in the industry that live there on the campus. You've got folks who have done makeup, clothing design, set design, etc. and their volunteers run the gamut. One of their main volunteers was Kirk Douglas, believe it or not. He actually celebrated, I think, his 99th birthday just before he passed away there at the facility. Everybody has a talent, everybody can volunteer, right?
So fun. Can you tell we could do a whole week-long conference on volunteering.
Absolutely.
We get you for 2 more minutes. So we're going to do the speed wrap up. So think about involving your local community. Some basic tips I would think about. Make sure you have a volunteer check-in, a volunteer center. I have some examples of what that might look like. A bulletin board, upcoming needs, name badges, laminate. Any of you know me, I think I saw a few names I know. Laminate and lead lesson plans. It's the teacher wannabe in me. You have a little tip sheet for that. Okay, Sally, I want you to lead the Name 10 game tonight at 6:30. It's right there telling her what to do. This was a great fit with these 8th graders. They came out and they had a walking partner with a senior living with dementia. It became like a status symbol for them in their civic class. Did you get picked for Walk With Me? And we would go out and talk to this curriculum and school district. We only picked, it was very selective. We only took 20 students a quarter or semester, and they got to sign it. It was very special and important. They got to learn about their senior. They learned about dementia. They tracked, and we were able to show some evidence of improved daily living. And a few 8th graders said they wanted to change their career from how special it was. And Ruby's Wish, because we want to turn this back over to Megan to close up today. If you've not heard of Ruby, your heart will just swell. Ruby followed her mom who did home health visits, and she decided to do 3 wishes for people in a building and just started to fulfill it. She got a GoFundMe going, and she was just so surprised. People just wanted, one of the things in this clip that cracks me up, it was out in the South, but they wanted a lot of Vienna sausage. People wanted a pie, but all they really wanted was a hug from her, right? These preteen kids and all they can bring. So Lynn, do you briefly want to mention this certification and
Sure.
information up on, turn it back over to Megan.
Okay, yes. So the NCCDP has launched a new certification for volunteers. We've been long known for our certified dementia practitioner, which is a certification for those who are actually employed in healthcare. But because there are so many volunteers who actually sit through our dementia care curriculum course, we have launched a volunteer certification now for volunteers called the CDV, or Certified Dementia Volunteer. So if you have a great volunteer base, please send them over to NCCDP to take our dementia care seminar, and then they are qualified to become certified dementia volunteers. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite quotes, and I hope this is my personal mission as life comes and does what it does for all of us. Do all the good, and for ourselves and for those we are entrusted to bring good days to. Do all the good you can by all the means that you can, in all the ways that you can, and all the places that you can for all the people that you can, as long as you ever can. It's one of my favorite quotes as we close up today, Megan. Thank you for letting us be with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rochelle and Lynn. And I do have, just very quickly, maybe each of you can address this one question that came in from Rhonda really quickly before I jump into my final announcements here. But do you have any ideas for how you can get one's active residents to feel comfortable coming out of their rooms and have some peace of mind amid COVID-19? Any quick answers there?
I can share briefly that being back in the trenches a few days a week, I wish I could say I had the idea, but it was there before me. They do a resident wellness incentive punch card, and they have points on the calendar or different initiatives that they come out of their room. They earn points, and they can come and raffle towards like the bingo prizes and like a monthly resident council. Their punch card goes towards prizes, and it's really seeming to bring people back out.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we encourage folks to know about the safety measures in our communities so that they feel comfortable coming back out. Also, another resource, those of you who are in the activity field, you might want to go to our the NCCDP marketplace to download. We have a specific booklet you can download for volunteering and volunteer programs to run in your facilities. And some of that gives tips about making the environment comfortable, making people feel comfortable to come out and participate. So
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I just really love what you shared today too about volunteering being a two-way street. I really believe that there's the benefits to us as volunteers and to the residents that we're serving as well. So thank you so much. We dropped the presentation link in the chat box, and I am going to bring up here contact information for Rochelle and Lynn if you want to reach out to them about anything that was presented today. We also put together a co-branded tip sheet. So thank you, Rochelle and Lynn, for working with us on that. That was also dropped in the chat box today. I just want to remind everyone as well that we have an upcoming events calendar. Our next webinar is going to be on August 9th. So save the date for that event. And finally, we did announce the fall gathering known as the Decoding Dementia Gathering event. The agenda is now up and you can register for that. It's going to be 3 sessions total, so up to 3 continuing education credits available for everyone who attends. And right now I'm going to drop the continuing education link into the chat box for everyone to fill out. And with that, Rochelle and Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. It was an amazing presentation.
Thank you
So much.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone. We'll hope to see you next time.